You walk past a mirror every single day. You barely look. But if a Neanderthal walked past that same mirror, dressed in your clothes, riding the same subway, most people wouldn't even turn their head. That's how close they were to you. Not a hunched, grunting brute, a person. And 40,000 years ago, they vanished, completely. What actually happened to them is far stranger than the story you were taught. For most of the 20th century, you were told a simple version. Cavemen, slow, stupid, outcompeted by smarter humans who marched in and replaced them. Clean story, comfortable story. Almost entirely wrong. Here's what you actually share with them. If your ancestors came from outside Africa, somewhere between 1 and 4% of your genome is Neanderthal. Not metaphorically, literally. It's sitting inside your cells right now, shaping things you'd never guess. Your immune system, your skin, even how you respond to certain diseases. In 2010, geneticist Svante Pääbo led the team that sequenced the first Neanderthal genome, and what they found rewired an entire field overnight. Humans and Neanderthals didn't just cross paths, they had children together, repeatedly, across thousands of years. Pääbo would go on to win the Nobel Prize for this work because it forced science to answer a much harder question. If they were mating with us, raising children with us, surviving in some of the harshest Ice Age environments on Earth for over 300,000 years, why did they disappear and we didn't? Let's slow down on what they actually were. Neanderthals had brains as large as yours, sometimes larger. They controlled fire. They made tools, complex ones, adapted precisely to the region they lived in. They buried their dead, sometimes with flowers or ochre pigment placed carefully around the body. Archaeologist Eric Trinkhaus, who spent decades studying Neanderthal skeletons, found repeated evidence of individuals who survived devastating injuries. Broken ribs, shattered legs, blindness, injuries that would have killed them outright without long-term care from other members of their group. That's not the profile of a mindless animal. That's the profile of a society that looked after its wounded. So if they were this capable, this adaptable, this human, what actually wiped them out? Scientists don't agree on one single answer, but they agree on something more unsettling. It probably wasn't one thing. It was several forces closing in at once, none of them dramatic enough on their own, all of them lethal together. Start with numbers, not weapons, numbers. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests Neanderthal populations across Europe and Western Asia were small, scattered, isolated pockets of a few dozen individuals, not sprawling tribes. Small populations are fragile. A bad winter, a disease outbreak, a string of failed hunts. Any one of these can quietly erase a group that never had the numbers to absorb the loss. Modern humans arriving from Africa, by contrast, came in with larger, more connected social networks that could trade, share resources, and replace lost members. It's the same principle that keeps a small startup vulnerable and a massive company insulated. Scale isn't just convenient, it's survival. Then there's climate. The world Neanderthals lived in was not stable. Ice ages advanced and retreated, sometimes over just a few centuries, reshaping entire ecosystems. Their bodies were extraordinary cold weather machines, stocky, heat-conserving, built for the cave-bear world of Ice Age Europe. But when the climate swung, when prey animals migrated or vanished, that same specialization became a liability. Modern humans, less physically specialized but more behaviorally flexible, adapted their diets, tools, and clothing faster. Being perfectly built for one world can be dangerous when the world changes. And then, quietly, disease. When two populations that have been separated for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly start interbreeding, they exchange more than DNA. They exchange pathogens neither immune system has ever encountered. Some researchers, including those building on Pääbo's genomic work, have proposed that disease transmitted through contact with incoming humans could have hit Neanderthal populations hard, especially ones already thinned by isolation and climate stress. You don't need a genocide for a population to collapse. Sometimes a cough is enough, spread through a species with no defense against it. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. There likely wasn't a single decisive war between humans and Neanderthals. No last stand, no great battle you'd see reenacted in a documentary. Archaeologist Chris Stringer, one of the leading voices in human origins research, has argued the process was almost certainly slow, gradual, a shrinking range here, a missed generation there. Small groups blinking out, one by one, across thousands of years, so slowly that no single Neanderthal alive at any point would have known their entire species was disappearing. They weren't defeated. They were absorbed and worn down, generation after generation, until one day there simply weren't enough of them left to keep going. And some of them didn't vanish at all. They live on, fragmented, inside you. Every time you inherit a gene that helps your immune system recognize a new virus faster, there's a real chance a Neanderthal ancestor gave you that advantage tens of thousands of years ago. Every time scientists trace certain traits in modern humans, thicker hair, particular skin tones, even some pain sensitivity variants, back to Neanderthal DNA, they're tracing a species that supposedly went extinct, still quietly making decisions about your body today. Extinction, it turns out, isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes it's just a merger nobody announced. So why does this matter to you, scrolling through your day, 40,000 years removed from any of it? Because the Neanderthals weren't defeated by strength. They were undone by scale, by rigidity, by an inability to adapt quite fast enough while a more networked, more flexible population absorbed and outlasted them. That's not an ancient story. That's a pattern that has repeated in businesses, in cultures, in ideas, over and over since. The species that survives isn't always the strongest one in the room. It's the one that can bend when the world stops cooperating. Next time you catch your reflection in a mirror, glance a little closer. There's a face looking back at you that, for over 300,000 years, belonged to two different kinds of humans, walking the same earth, sharing the same fires, and eventually the same blood. You didn't replace them. In a very real, very literal sense, you're what's left of both of you.